All right, let's go through another TV guide. This one is from October 28th of 1978. If you've seen any of my other videos, I do want to put a little context for those that may not or may remember. TV in this era, you had antenna TV. You might have had 7 or 8 channels at the most, maybe 9 if you were in a big market, maybe 6 or 7 if you were in the boonies. 3 major networks, so not a ton to choose from, and we'll see how that shows up in this TV guide. So for starters, 1978. Working Mindy. I never watched that show, but I know it was very well beloved. He was kind of a superhero, so I think they even had like toys and stuff based off of Mork. Let's get into this. Yeah, and I'll just add commentary as I go here. Of course, we got a cigarette ad. Yeah, I talked about it in some other videos, or people would buy this to use it as a guide. Some people would buy it to read it. Not everybody would look through it cover to cover like we are. Some people would just grab it, use it as a reference when they were ready to watch something. But we'll go through it and see the articles and the ads and all the fun stuff that's in here. Yeah, this is interesting. So they're talking about VHS in 1978, but unless you were pretty rich, you most likely did not get a VCR until maybe the early to mid 80s. But yeah, this is probably an interesting article talking about what it's going to mean for TV, etc. This new, what they call video cassette recorders. And it certainly was a revolution, but probably not till the 80s when it really became more of a household item. You can get 15% off your cheese. It's probably the imitation cheese. I think they still make that. I have no idea what this is. Something about no wax floor. Dummies solve the problem. Oh, I see. Yeah, I was going to say, what does this have to do with TV? Looks like they're talking about filming a scene for a movie or something, or a TV show. And some behind-the-scenes stuff. Here we go. Double page cigarette ad. If you think cigarettes weren't big, you're probably too young to remember. It's probably a good thing. Wow, even in 78 they had that. It's interesting. Okay, so he was on the cover. I guess I got a full little interview article with Robin Williams. This is probably interesting to look at. Very young, stand-up comedian. This is kind of his first big breakout show. How about this? Check out that TV. It's huge. It's probably 17 inches or maybe even 21. Gigantic. We'll get to the TV stuff and we'll go through it. But it is kind of fun to look at some of these, the front matter, the articles, the ads, pantyhose. Came in that egg-shaped thing. Wonder what this is about. Nuclear war. Another cigarette ad. Sometimes it feels like these TV guides are nothing but cigarette ads and whiskey ads, but we'll see. We did get a pantyhose ad. Is that Arthur Ashe promoting the military? Yeah, again, this is from October 28th, so it's probably right before election season. Although 78, I don't think was an election year. I think election years always fell in the same years as the Olympics. Yeah, in terms of presidential. All right, this is screening room. I don't know if they're talking about movies or what here. Folgers coupon. Yeah, it seems like, so this was before I started getting TV Guide, or my family did, but I guess they had these letters in there for quite a long time. I remember these from the 80s, people writing letters to TV Guide. This week's movies. It seems like most of the TV guides do feature this, where it has a rundown of some of the movies that are coming on for the week. Kiss Meets the Phantom. That's pretty funny. And that's partly why I'm doing this. I mean, who remembers Kiss or Meets the Phantom? But it might be funny to look that up, see if it's on YouTube, or see if it's out there. Movie Guide, I believe. I don't exactly know when cable came into households, but it looks like TV Guide. If cable was out, it was in the super early days. So I don't think there's any cable TV listings in this 78 issue. So here, when they're talking about movies, they're probably talking about just TV movies. Yeah, they usually always have this, like a little sports rundown for the week. And again, some people might grab the TV Guide and just look at this and barely look through the rest. In the same way people used to buy newspapers just for the funnies, or for the want ads, or for the sports section. All right, so here's an important thing to understand about these TV guides if you're not familiar with them. They serve a large market. So this TV guide would serve maybe a couple states or more. So there will be like multiple channels listed, and this tells us what that is. I think this TV guide is actually from Connecticut, but it looks like it's got New York City listings, New Jersey, and some Connecticut listings here. All right. So it always starts off, as far as I remember, it always starts off on Saturday morning, which is kind of a fun place to start to maybe see what cartoons were on. And so let's take a look and see if we recognize any of these cartoons. Popeye and Friends, might have been like reruns of the Popeye cartoons. Little Rascals, that would have been the original live action. Reruns. Flintstones, probably were still making, I don't know if they were still making new ones at that time. Scooby-Doo, Woody Woodpecker, nothing too. Birdman and Galaxy Trio, Super Friends, this might have been the first run of those. Godzilla cartoon, I vaguely remember that. Moby Dick and Mightor. Be interesting to Google that and see what that cartoon was. Looks like they were running Sesame Street on Saturday mornings. Soul Train, of course. Even tells you who's going to be on there. Atlantic Star. Hee Haw. Didn't realize that came on Saturday mornings. I wonder if that was like a rerun. I think that usually came on in like the evening. But don't quote me on that. All right. Big Panther cartoon. And then, of course, probably afternoon movies on a Saturday. If you've seen any of my videos, I'm not going to go through every single show at every single time. So I'm definitely going to skip something that you might have liked. I will try to go through a lot, comment on some stuff, but yeah, there'll definitely be things on here that I missed that you might say, why did you not mention, I don't know, I Dream of Jeannie or whatever I just saw in here somewhere, Gilligan's Island. All right, yeah, and some of the fun of these TV guides, if you do or do not remember them, is the ads. It's what was going on at the time, etc. Sports Spectacular. think those kind of programs would show like a variety of different sports all in the same sort of televised couple hours or whatever. It's not like what we're used to now where we have all different ones to choose from on different channels. Probably an old movie they're advertising here. I doubt that was a new movie at the time. Yeah, and these, if anybody remembers TV Guide, they usually had that evening breakdown in kind of a grid. And these 1978 ones, it was before they started doing that. So here we're getting into prime time on Saturday night, and it's just the regular listing style. But as you just saw, those ads will give us some clues, and they're great to look at. Canon camera back in the 70s. I bet those were fun. I think that started in the 60s. So I wonder if those are like original ones in the 70s. Okay, there's a ad for that thing we were talking about. I'm assuming the guys are in this. Looks like it's some live action deal. Welcome back, Cotter on Saturday night. Rhoda. NHL hockey, there you go. Let's check out these. Welcome back, Cotter. Carter Country. I don't remember that. Everybody remembers Love Boat, If You're Alive, and Fantasy Island at this time. I think they were on Saturday night. Two great, well-beloved shows. May talk more about those in other episodes. A lot of Saturday night movies and stuff. This is the NFL. That's kind of cool. It's probably like highlights from the week. So back then, you would get really good highlight reels on these kind of things. Not where they just run stuff 24 hours a day. So you get all the best of the best. I remember a show in the 80s called This Week in Baseball that was just absolutely great. Especially if you didn't have time to watch a lot of the games. All right, so this is getting into later Saturday night. Second City. Huh. I doubt that was on all across the country. I could be wrong, but I bet it was on up north, like in Connecticut, because you're closer to the Canadian border. Sunday morning. Let's see real quickly. Yeah, notice late at night, there's like almost nothing on. Most of the channels just go off the air. So if you were up this time of night, you probably have like one thing to watch, which is kind of cool aspect of old school broadcast TV. Now we have a million things on all the time. Usually Sunday morning, I was going through another TV guide. It is a lot of religious stuff, maybe not as much up north as it was. The one I was looking at before was in the Midwest. Yes, this would be a Sunday football season. Funny thing they did in these TV guides that I don't remember at all is they would put the full roster of a couple teams. So they got the full Jets, New England Patriots roster from 1978 right here, which is pretty cool. I wasn't a huge football fan. I was a huge baseball fan at this time. Became a football fan later, so I probably wouldn't know a lot of these guys from the Jets. Well, yeah. Might have been one of those projection TVs. Yeah, it's fun seeing like the local ads. So these local stores in New York and Connecticut and etc. Retire in Florida for 21 grand. 60 Minutes has been a long-running show. World of Disney was like an absolute staple in the late 70s, early 80s. So if you were younger, you would probably try to gather around the TV on Sunday night and catch that. Hardy Boys was a great fun show. One nice thing about some of these listings, you'll notice they even show the guest stars. Robert Loggia is on this episode of the Hardy Boys. Here we go. Some of these featured ads. Centennial. Just looking at some of these names. All right. All in the Family came on Sunday night, it looks like. Lawrence Welk was still on in the 70s. Battlestar Galactica, there you go. That's what we'd be watching, right? The fun stuff. 8 o'clock Sunday night, Battlestar, Cylons, Starbuck, Apollo, Crash. Some of these old movies have some pretty crazy realistic special effects because they had to like torch a real plane and some stuff like that. So even though these are probably fairly cheesy by today's standards, they sometimes have some crazy practical effects in them. Trying to see if I recognize any of these actors. And I'm sure you might recognize a couple that I don't, which is part of why I want to put these out here on the internet. Definitely Sharon Gless from Cagney and Lacey. This is probably before she was on that show. Get financing on a TV or a vacuum here. Dallas was on that nighttime soap opera on Sunday nights, it looks like. Slimkins, 7 times faster than diet pills. All right. Valley of the Dolls. Pretty sure that would have been a rerun movie at that time. I don't know if this came out in 78, but yeah, that's definitely a well-known classic movie. Yeah, it says part 1, the movie in the middle of the day. Seems like that would have been a rerun, but still cool that they got a full ad for it. So now we're into Monday, and it's always fun to try to see what cartoons they would show in the morning. If you were alive back in those days, you would get up, eat your cereal, and maybe try to catch Flintstones or Woody Woodpecker or something before you had to go to school. For me, one of my favorites was Inspector Gadget, and that was in the 80s. Trying to see any others. Magoo and Friends, that'd be Mr. Magoo. Sesame Street coming on at 8. Trying to see if Mr. Rogers is on here somewhere. I do skip past some stuff, unfortunately, but I plan to go through quite a few of these, so if I might skip something here, I might catch it in another episode. So this will be like the daytime TV. So this will be the same throughout the week, probably. Price is Right at 10:30. I think that originally was a half-hour show for the first season or two. And then that full hour is really where it found its true form. Young and the Restless. Wheel of Fortune in the daytime. I wonder if that used to always come on in the daytime. I don't know. And anyway, I don't think Pat and Vanna were on there, but then again, I thought they were always the ones that were on there. But in 78, that's pretty far back. All right, so these would probably be reruns if they were on at 6 and 7. I know The Odd Couple was probably in syndication at that point. I don't remember Fish having his own show. That's kind of interesting. I think he was from Barney Miller. But yeah, The Odd Couple, I loved that show when I was a kid in the reruns. Sesame Street. It seems like they would run it. Maybe it was on different channels or something, like in different cities. Merv Griffin, he was pretty big. It's kind of like Donahue, I think. You're sitting around, you can watch MASH. And again, when you get home from school, You got like Fred Flintstone and Friends, unless your mom was watching General Hospital and wouldn't let you change the channel. Bewitched, great, great show. Spider-Man, that's the show that went straight into my brain the first time I saw it and took over my brain, and it's still there because it was through the cartoon, which was from the 60s, that I got into the comics. So I guess today people get into things through the internet or whatever. Woody Woodpecker, so these are just the afternoon things that you would catch. $6 Million Man at 5. Huh, that's great. That was another roster. Interesting. The last one I looked through only had one roster in the whole TV guide. The Muppet Show at 7:30. If you were a kid in the 70s, you definitely watched the Muppet Show. Alice Cooper joins the Muppets. I don't remember that one. Definitely remember John Denver being on there. Check it out. So we are in that season. This is October 28th. Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. 8 o'clock on CBS. Peanuts cartoon special. Little House on the Prairie. Monday nights. Great show. They don't make them like that anymore. With heart, with soul. Talking about feelings, etc. Guess that's forbidden now. Penn State highlights. That's funny. Guess you're a huge Penn State fan in Connecticut or wherever. Check this out. I think this was a movie, so this must have been like some cartoon based on it. And again, this is why I think it's valuable to go through these old TV guides, because who remembers this? I certainly don't. But it'd be interesting to try to find this. Puff the Magic Dragon cartoon, not the actual movie. Elections prelude. Guy's gonna drink some whiskey off top of his head. That's how we did it in the 70s, I guess. All right, when I was flipping through this, I did see this, and you know I'm gonna stop and talk about Christy McNichol, the best, the greatest, the heartthrob. If you were a kid in the 70s, you were in love with Christy McNichol. I certainly was. I didn't know she had this little TV movie, Summer of My German Soldier. I might have to look for that because that sounds pretty hilarious. Also got Esther Rowe, and I think that dude was in some movies, but I don't know for sure. Looks like the Rams are playing the Falcons. Frank Gifford, Howard Cosell, Don Meredith. Best lineup ever of announcers for football. What an age. What an age. Lou Grant. Again, I know I'm skipping some stuff. Rockford Files coming on at 11:30. Johnny Carson. He's got David Brenner and McLean Stevenson, Bernadette Peters. Man, you know she was a knockout in 1978. You look up Bernadette Peters, Johnny Carson, I bet your eyes will be glued to the screen. Let's see, Captain Kangaroo. So this Tuesday morning. It's probably the same stuff that was on yesterday, but I don't remember seeing Captain Kangaroo in there. Yeah. I Love Lucy. That would be a rerun, but it'd be a fun thing to watch at 10 if you were sitting at home on a weekday. Dinosaur was big. Kind of like the Today Show meets Oprah. I don't know how to describe it. If you know, you know. But she was nice. She was very motherly, very friendly, very welcoming. Let's see what else. Happy Days in the Middle of the Day. Partridge Family. There's that second part. If you're home at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday, you can watch a biographical movie of Houdini starring Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh. That's a great lineup. Tony Curtis, Janet Leigh. Even if you don't care about Houdini, you might want to watch that. Here's Mr. Rogers at 6 p.m., that says. That's interesting. But again, different markets, they would run things at different times. You know, depending on where you live, you might watch Mr. Rogers, or maybe they ran it twice a day. This looks weird. Rex something or other. Rip Taylor, that's the guy's name. 8 o'clock on a Tuesday night. Paper Chase, I vaguely remember that. Grandpa Goes to Washington, comedy. I definitely don't remember that. Again, some of these things might be fun to look up online. Happy Days. Everybody loved that show. Wow, check that out. That's pretty scary. Dog's got horns. People that live next door to a barking dog probably visualize that in their sleep. Laverne and Shirley. Late 70s, Laverne and Shirley. As good as it gets. As good as it gets. You either love Laverne or you love Shirley. You love them both. Linda Blair, exorcist, stars in Strangers in Our House. I don't think I've heard of that movie. She was a pretty big star for a while, and it's kind of a shame that her stardom didn't last too long. Just the fickleness of Hollywood, and especially when you're a young actor or actress, it's like when you get a little bit older, become an adult, they don't want to cast you anymore. Three's Company. Great performances. Count Dracula, okay. Taxi, that's a 70s staple. Great show, great cast. Probably talk more about that in other episodes. Yeah, every person in the cast was great. Starsky and Hutch. I never got into that, but it was really a popular show. I was a Dukes of Hazzard guy, maybe because I was a little bit too young for Starsky and Hutch. But I was just the perfect age when Dukes of Hazzard came along. Yeah, and this time of night, on a weeknight, would be, you know, reruns from the 60s and stuff. So you got Twilight Zone, you got Barnaby Jones. Alright, we've seen a lot of this. Same stuff on a weekday. There's Diane Cannon. Did you know that was spelled with a Y? I learned that just a few years ago. If you don't remember her as an actress, you probably remember her sitting courtside at Laker games. But she was both. Yeah, here's Dinah Shore's lineup and different guests she's having on. Wow, check that out. So this was 78. This is definitely before Schwarzenegger was in pretty much any movies. He might have done Pumping Iron this year, but yeah, it was before he became a huge star. But he's showing up on the Mike Douglas show. Josie and the Pussycats in Outer Space cartoon. I vaguely remember seeing that on YouTube recently. MASH was a huge show. $6 Million Man was like our first superhero if you were a kid of the 70s. From Battlestar to Battle of Puns. Battlestar Galactica was pretty cool in that they had like female pilots and stuff. And I know that sounds silly by today's standards, but you know, Princess Leia in Star Wars, she was kind of the princess, but Battlestar Galactica, they had men and women doing all the heroic stuff. Looks like oh yeah, I was gonna say that looks like David Letterman's. Look how insane this is. Call this number, dial a joke. David Letterman delivers the laughs. That is wild. New York telephone. And that's a great drawing. All right, are we into Wednesday evening here? Am I skipping anything interesting? Probably am. Here we go. Burt Reynolds, Lauren Bacall. Sorry if I messed some of these names up. Probably says right here. I vaguely remember this movie. It's a pretty good action movie. Burt Reynolds was the biggest movie star in the 70s. If you didn't live through that, it probably sounds crazy, but nobody was a bigger star than Burt Reynolds. He had Smokey and the Bandit. He had Cannonball Run. He had a lot of other stuff. He was the guy. It's like a lot of movies on Wednesday night. Here you go. You can get your Cheryl Ladd or Farrah poster. $250, a little pricey for 70s, but you'd pay that for Farrah. You'd pay that for life-size Cheryl Ladd on your door. And speaking of, there's Charlie's Angels. Comes on Wednesday night. Is that late at night? 9 o'clock? Okay. Vegas. Don Urick. Just looking at some of these names and stuff. Jimmy Swaggart. Doing his swag. This will be late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. We've kind of already seen what's going on in the early mornings of the 1978 world. Yeah, and again, I apologize if this is your thing and I flip right past it, but that girl was a cute show. I think that's what it was called. Margot Thomas, maybe? Marlo Thomas? I don't know, but I think that's the show I'm thinking of. Family Feud. I think that's Chris Evert. Yeah, there's Chris Evert. Huge tennis star of the 70s. America's sweetheart. She would go up against Martina. All right, here we go. Thursday night. Check out this lineup. Mork and Mindy. What's happening? Great show. Barney Miller. I have comments on that. I'm going to make them. That's what we're here for, right? So, Barney Miller, really popular show. I never watched it because I was a kid, you know, but this was a popular sort of comedic cop show. All dudes. I watched a few episodes in the last few years. Just all dudes. Like, can't you put one female on the show? Are people going to sit around and just watch all dudes? But it was a huge show. So there you go. That's my take on Barney Miller. Sorry for Barney Miller fans. It was probably a good show. It was fun to see cops joking around and stuff instead of always being somewhat serious. This is interesting. Cinderella at the Palace. Frank Sinatra. All right. Just seeing if anything else is on this. We already saw what's happening, etc., but just seeing what else is on at the same time. Oh, there's Family again. I mentioned that in my another video I made, so I won't revisit my Christy McNichol obsession, but she was on a show called Family. It ran about 4 or 5 years. It's a good show. I had Meredith Baxter Burney. Solid writing. Looks like it came on late on Thursday nights, according to this. 10:30 at night of basketball games. Oh, okay, because they were playing the Spurs. All right, we're almost done here. We're at the Friday morning already. The Love Machine. I think we saw that earlier in the... Yeah, some of these daytime talk shows are interesting. They had those further back than we probably remember. Some Like It Bonkers. All right, here we go. Friday night. Holy smokes. How much better can you get than this? If you don't know, you don't know. Wonder Woman and The Incredible Hulk. See, by the time I really got into TV, it was more early 80s, and these were more like in rerun mode. So I didn't realize they came on back to back. That would have been amazing for a kid. Two of the best superhero shows. Other than $6 Million Man, I don't know what else you put up there with those in terms of superhero type stuff. Flying High, I don't know what that is. I think that's the girl from Hill Street Blues, though, but I'm not sure. And we got the Fonz, Happy Days, and Welcome Back, Kotter. That would have been a great comedy lineup, but I would have been watching Wonder Woman. Who are we kidding here? Okay, we're not quite to 8 o'clock. Different Strokes. Great 1970s show. Who's Watching the Kids? Scott Baio. Interesting. Oh, Jim Belushi. I thought that was Jim Belushi. Have patience with me if I don't read everything on the page. Sometimes it's right in front of my face and I won't see it. So we got Wonder Woman, we got Different Strokes, we got Happy Days. Man, they were competitive on a Friday night. Now Friday is kind of a throwaway night and has been for decades. Rockford Files going against the Hulk. Come on, we know who wins that matchup. Flying High. How to Pick Up Girls. Desi Arnaz. Alright, that's about it, but there's always a few things in the back here that are worth looking or at least flipping through. I don't look at all these ads because some of them are kind of wacky, but occasionally I'll look at these. Guess you can get some books about nature here. Farrah Fawcett isn't a blonde. Alright, Pat Klaus. I'm afraid I haven't heard of her, but that's why we're looking through these. Get some pears in a can. Guy on a phone paying 20 cents a minute, because that's how we had to do it back in the day. Yeah, they would have articles and stuff, you know, all entertainment related. Here's another smoking ad. Not as many cigarette ads in this one as the one I went through before. A little disappointed. Diet pills again, I think. Oh no, it was just headache. All right. Anything else here? And we know we got to look at the ad on the back. Yeah, I talked about this in my other one. Crossword puzzle. All entertainment-related stuff, so somebody that knew what was going on in TV and movies could probably work their way through this pretty well. Here's some more cigarettes. I knew we'd have some more. Some weird guy writing some boring stuff that nobody can read, and we got to finish it up with a whiskey ad. All right.